February 23rd, 2012. Last week's been sort of rough. I hinted in a couple of my journal entries at my concern with the relationship I have with my daughters. And last night I had a couple disturbing dreams, and a few weeks ago the idea came to me that what I just need to do is sit and meditate, clear my mind. I think the main conflict stems from understanding that there has been a main motif of self-reliance, self-responsibility, and self-accountability as a main player in my life. And I have come into difficulties and struggles in direct relationship to this inner message that I'm learning in relationship to external circumstances. And this started pretty young. As a young adult, that's one of the main motifs that is asked of an individual. But I find it really interesting how when I have some inner struggle, I seek on my own answers that will resolve or may assist in this struggle. And I find that coming back to Toynbee explains this. I'm taking off from where I left off before. Page 61. This is his abridged one-volume edition. But these blessings have their price in the currency of interstate warfare. So he's talking about a time of unification where there's great boons. But with the great boons comes interstate warfare. And I mentioned in a previous clip that there's a great deal of interstate commerce, taxation, and all kinds of things that are occurring in our country right now. But the externals are reflective of the internal. And at a point may come with the toll, when the toll taken by this is greater than any benefit that the stimuli of variety and competition can confer. If the balance becomes decidedly adverse, the society breaks down. It might be asked why a society does not forestall its breakdown. Now, in his definition of society, it's just interrelationships. Whereas for me, culture comes first and then society is developed. The interrelationships are born out of that vital life force, life pulse that is cultural. Or at any rate, why does not the society retrieve this balance? By promptly applying the remedy of political unification, to which it does eventually have recourse. Why do people put up with a long drawn-out time of troubles before bringing themselves to get rid of warfare by submitting to a universal state? The answer is that human beings are creatures of habit, and that the regime of local sovereignties has originally won such a hold on people's hearts in the age when it was producing a balance of advantage that it takes a long experience of its subsequent disastrous effects to induce its former beneficiaries to abandon their allegiance to it when they have become its victims. And this idea right here is key to addiction as well. In some addiction circles, they say you have to reach your bottom. You have to come to a point where you realize you are no longer receiving the benefits, and that, as he says, there needs to be an abandon to our allegiance to this previous mode of behavior, because we've now become victims to it. When once, however, a universal state has been established, it is not surprising that this regime should win a hold on the people's hearts in its turn. The peace and order that the achievement of political unity brings with it are appreciated by contrast with a foregoing time of troubles that had become intolerable before it was transcended. And the loss of stimulus now seems a cheap price to pay for the inestimably precious boon of being rescued from the jaws of destruction and guaranteed against a recurrence of this fearful threat so long as the universal state lasts. With the passage of time, a universal state's hold over its subjects' hearts is apt to increase unless the empire builders have been aliens who have persistently made themselves odious. Now this is interesting, is that a universal state might, using the symbolism of addiction, a universal state that brings balance could possibly be a larger perspective, a metaphysical view. In addiction circles, it's the 12 steps, which incorporate a spiritual doctrine, a spiritual perspective. And then it takes the person out of the mire of their own self-destruction and steps back and says, well, here's a bigger picture that brings everything into order. All you have to do is participate with this new order, and then things will get better. So, but this time of troubles first needs to be transcended. With the passage of time, a universal state over its subjects' hearts is apt to increase unless the empire builders have been aliens who have persistently made themselves odious. Now, I'm reminded of Carl Jung's statement that we don't want to pick up a foreign country's religion, and because we put on new robes and let our own mansions fall to destruction. It's a very interesting idea where we need to stay true to ourselves. We can't just throw off our ideas for somebody else's ideas. We need to integrate them and become more whole and expand our development. And this is no easy task. It is easy to understand why a universal state, once established, should be restored again and again when it has broken down. But we still have to ask ourselves why, when once it has been established, there should be any intermediate periods at all, considering that normally the maintenance of the universal state is desired by at least a majority of its subjects. So what he's getting at is that there's a periodic decline and dissolution, and he tries to find out, and I'll be finding out, as much as I can, just what that's about.